Hello, viewers. Welcome to the show. What show? Hello, viewers. Welcome
The show at the end
to
of the internet. Sorry, my
the
bird was being a
show.
pest.
Yeah. What show? Yeah.
The show
What am I
where
coming through?
we give
Where?
stupid
Oh, there we
anecdotes.
go. Sorry. I had the shit coming through and it was like echoing and being stupid. All right, we're good. We're good.
Anyway, the show where we give stupid anecdotes and opinions that you don't want or ask for.
Pretty much. Yep. Hang on, I'm stupid. There we go. We are good.
Experiencing technical difficulties. We good
No, no technical difficulties, just me being stupid. So, mental difficulties. But, yeah. Welcome, welcome. We are officially on episode number 1. Isn't that astounding? The last go was a test run. I think it went pretty well. And now we're official. 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 So, I suppose to be starting off with this thing. Time is an interesting thing. We live in interesting times. We have lived in interesting times. Things have changed so much, especially in recent years. Just in the past 4 or 5 years, it's been fucking crazy. The whole paradigm shift. A lot of worrying things, but I think we could use a respite from that.
I mean,
And
we
go
had
back
someone
into
just
date.
straight up get into the White House via memes, which is probably the single greatest event of my life. So it's been pretty wild.
Yeah, yeah. I think we can use a respite from all the craziness of today's modernity. And let's go back, turn the tables to an earlier time in our lives. A very special, niche period of which there's been incredible advancement at the fastest pace I think humanity's ever seen. Yeah, suppose we're going on a nostalgia trip to our times in the early, mid, late 2000s, because it was an interesting time to be alive, to be coming up in this world, the internet just starting to catch on as we're getting up there. It's definitely an interesting one. So, where do we want to start there? Let's go early, because you are among the last of the people to be raised up in a time where you remember the sort of flashpoint of this millennium, the tragedy of the Twin Towers in 9/11. You're one of the last people to be able to say, one of the youngest people to be able to say,
That
you
yes,
can
it in
grow up and
fact
remember
happened, and
that.
I saw it happen on TV.
Yeah.
Shut up.
You're one of the last, the youngest ones that can say that. Isn't that interesting, huh? Still
It
pretty young.
definitely made for an interesting day of kindergarten.
I came along a bit after that. I would have still been shitting myself in diapers by the time that happened. So, I don't have memory of it. I'm one of the, you could say well, not really the first, but among the sort of first wave of people to come around who don't really have a memory of that. From just, being too young, but being there. It's interesting. So, childhood. Everybody likes to go back into their childhood, especially when things get tough. And just nostalgia, use those rose tinted glasses, even if times weren't that great. So, growing up, I'm one of the last people to more or less grow up without ready access to the internet. I haven't been. I started using the internet right around when I turned 13, is when it really became accessible where I lived back in Louisiana. Before then, I mean, it existed, of course, but that's when I officially started using the internet. And the first thing I see when I start getting a little bit involved with that shit is Gamergate. So, fuck, right?
Jesus
That's an
Christ.
interesting time to start using the internet. Uh, but there were times before that, and I've had intermittent access throughout. Intermittent access to the internet throughout, earlier than that. And it was really interesting, especially the times before all of the major social media platforms almost kind of monopolizing themselves. or becoming the monopoly for discussion and all that. Definitely interesting. So what did you do before that?
Well, I don't really recall a period in my life where there was just no internet. My youngest memories, my parents didn't have a computer, but my grandparents, for as long as I can remember, always had one, even if it was a Gateway 95 or something like that. Um, I would believe it or not, the internet is nowhere near as pertinent to me growing up as much as it is you,
Me neither,
because
really.
it's, most of my childhood, revolved around toys, playing outside, uh,
Mm-hmm.
going to the movie theaters, and video games that didn't have multiplayer components. Although there were some that I was just about sentient enough to figure out with some help from my dad. Mm. Well, it's interesting to be able to look back in my own life and say that I saw I saw Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace in theaters when I was 3, and I remember it very well, quite possibly because of the fact that for one reason or another the theater in question had two clowns performing in the lobby. I don't know why, and I was mortified of clowns, so I remember that quite well. I also remember, even at 3 years old, being like, yeah, that was kind of stupid. I hate that movie so much.
Jeez.
Uh, growing up with the PlayStation 1 is probably the most impactful console at that point in my life, although it was definitely a lot of Super Nintendo going around in my life too, because one of my, A Link to the Past is probably my top 5 favorite games of all time.
Fair.
Metal Gear Solid 1, Metal Gear Solid 1, not Metal Gear 1. I know there's a lot of people who are anal about that. The distinction was the first video game I ever played, and not necessarily a great choice because it'll scare the shit out of you to hear that sound when you get caught when you're 3 or 4 years old. That's for sure.
Yeah, video games, they took a little bit to come into my life, personally. I'll never forget my first experience with video games, and this is in the mid 2000s, which is crazy. The first video game I ever actually played was Super Mario 3. Straight up on a really old NES. It barely worked. There were issues all the time. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm amazed that most NESs are just fucking brick shit houses and they can withstand anything. The one that I played Super Mario 3 on, I got to play it for about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, and then, I don't know, it shit the bed. Maybe there was a power surge, but it never worked again. This was a time where the only way I could play video games was going to my cousins who lived several towns away, about, I'd say, an hour and a half, 2 hours away. So I'd only get to visit them irregularly at best. And we had the best of times, especially in my early life, which was all in all not uh, the best. I don't want to make things sad, but there were issues. But the best times were always when I got to go to my cousins, because aside from that, we played so much, so much shit on the Super Nintendo. Actually, mostly, for the biggest part, Kirby's Dream Course and Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, I think. And a 4-year-old playing Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3.
A lot of button mashing, I bet.
Yeah.
A lot of what the fuck am I doing right now?
Just not even understanding what's going on the screen. I'm just a baby with a fucking gamepad that's like this big in my hand, trying to getting my ass kicked, getting really mad at my cousin, while also being very confused because I didn't know what fucking video games were, but I knew what I looked like when I lost.
Very upset.
Yeah. Man, whew, it is really hot in here tonight. Last night
Indeed,
was
quite hot
warm,
outside.
but tonight is toasty.
So something you just said there kind
Yeah.
of spurred thought in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up
You
in the
have though?
2000s, well, no, you're talking about going over to your cousins, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Growing up into the 2000s, uh, a big part of most kids' lives was going over to their friend's house, hanging out, and like staying the night over there. I certainly did it a lot. You know, friends came over to my house a lot. I went over to my friends' houses a lot, and I kind of want to know what has really, how's that gone? Has the age of the, because now it's so easy to conflate the playing video games online with the people that I grew up with as hanging out with them, and it's really, I'm quite curious as to what the age of the internet and social media, especially this hyper connected state, seemingly always knowing what the people in your inner circle are up to just at all times, just by dint of looking at your phone. You know, it's real. I'm really curious about how that culture either has persisted or has declined because, especially now that people are just so much more reserved in what they say and do in public, especially about what they let their kids do. I mean, we live in a hyper aware civilization when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to the things that the wrong adults might do. You know,
Okay, cool. I don't mean to dismiss you on that. It's definitely interesting, yeah, the idea of this that we grew up in, that I grew up in not long ago at all, and just how much that has shifted radically in just a few years. Just seeing how that is. It's definitely something I want to look more into, I think. Be a good idea. Maybe run a little independent study on like, hey, younger kid, see if we can get permission to ask some, maybe like 12-year-olds or something some questions like, what do you do? Do you go to your friend's house? Or do you just like FaceTime? Do you play that fucking Facebook I sound really old when I'm not. But it's like, do you play that fucking soccer Facebook game? What do you do? That's definitely. I haven't given any thought of it, any thought to that kind of thing, pretty much until you just brought that up. Of what kids growing up today are experiencing, because it is a radically different environment, socially, economically, and just technologically. The difference is huge in such a short amount of time. It's so short. Again, I haven't even thought to imagine what that looks like now for kids growing up today. Fuck. But
yeah. I mean, I hate to even think about what schools look like. I mean, when I going to school for me, especially by the time I was nearing adulthood, schools were so overly curated and they never really stopped feeling like daycares to me, ever.
schools.
You know,
Oh my god, I have one great story about the whole infantilization of schools. It's a very short one. It's probably going to be a little disappointing, but it's always funny just thinking about it because it made me really angry. Uh, because even though I was pretty outcast as a kid almost always, the entire way through school, I always tended to manage to find sort of a niche, something I could do where, at least for a little bit, it didn't feel like everyone around me hated me in school, and that was sports in PE, doing things like that. One of my favorite sports to do during PE was dodgeball. Dodgeball is fun. I would still do it today, but adults really don't do dodgeball for some reason.
where boys are
Uh,
separated from the men in middle school.
yeah, except, and I remember this vividly, it was the beginning part of my first year of middle school, going into seventh grade. We had a game of dodgeball. It was cool. It was fun. And then at some point towards the middle of the game, This one little gutter snipe, fucking skinny looking kid with glasses just gets hit in the face with a ball because, that happens, you know? And he threw the biggest hissy fit I have ever seen. Hey, welcome to the stream, by the way. He threw the biggest.
Welcome to the stream, Poopy Mexicano 69. How you doing?
Oh my god. So, again, just one of the scrawniest, whiniest kids I have ever seen, whatever. He gets hit in the face with a ball because it's dodgeball. That's what happens. And he throws the biggest fit. Pitches. It's something I haven't seen since I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade. Since I was in 3rd or 4th grade. And
What's up,
I saw.
Blizzy? Good to see you again. Welcome back.
And I saw a pre-care get like knocked off the monkey bars. That was the last time before that I had seen a fit that
One of the
bad.
sad realities of the world is small children falling on their faces is funny as hell.
And no, I'm getting to it. All right, I'm sorry about my narration. I'm trying to do a thing, but the point is, this dude pitched a fucking fit, and he almost fought the PE coach. He almost fought the coach, PE teacher, whatever.
Hell yeah.
And it got sent to the office. The parents came in. They're like, "Oh God, what happened? Our baby. He has like he part of his face is red," and the parents threatened to sue the school, and that was the end of dodgeball in that school forever.
Jesus.
And that was it. That was done. It was just this one thing, and this one dude just couldn't fucking take a hit. He couldn't stand the fact that he had to sit out, and his parents just threatened to sue the school. It is shut down. And I think that's really around the point where the big shift started to happen in terms of schools being even more infantilizing. Because this was around late 2012, early 2013 in that middle school, and I think it's pretty indicative of what would be to come, because now I just see nothing except, let me rephrase that, I see a lot of just talking in a lot of stories just about, so the one news story that appeared about about 2 years ago, I think it was, where a kid chewed a Pop-Tart vaguely in the shape of a gun.
Yeah,
And he got suspended.
He got fucking suspended. Oh god. Yeah.
And God. And that was right at the end of my schooling. I think I was a sophomore in high school when that came out. Either a sophomore or a junior. And I remember seeing it. Just the vice-like grip of like helicopter parenting. Turning not from just parents anymore. The parents are like going, the helicopter parents are just out of control. Their tail rotor's gone. They're spinning. They're Kobeing themselves into the fucking dirt with how their helicopter parenting's going, and it's getting projected onto schools. Now, there's no playing, there's no roughhousing, there's no any of that, any of those normal, childhood experiences, because somebody might get a scraped knee. At the risk of me sounding like a fucking boomer for saying that, it's just, I don't see how this is beneficial at all to children growing up.
Well, I mean, it isn't. Like, it factually is not. I mean, there's plenty of studies that show that children need to have struggle and confrontation. They need to suffer a little bit in order to develop as adults, because adulthood is nothing but suffering. So you need to have some of it sprinkled into your life when you're a spoiled little shit at some point. I have a story that's kind of similar to that, a little more, maybe a little more intentional in nature. So a friend of mine, you know him, no need to bring him up though. Long story short, he beat the ever living dog shit out of another kid in PE with a badminton racket, and they just they just took away the badminton like forever. It was just no longer a game that could be played. It had nothing to do with the game of badminton. They just fucking hated each other. So he beat the brakes off this kid with a badminton racket, so they ended badminton in the middle school forever.
God.
We can't even risk that happening again. It's like you remember that episode of someone at my school got expelled and arrested in the last couple of months of 12th grade because he vaguely made a shooting joke on Facebook. Yeah, that
Ooh.
happens.
Yeah. Speaking of, there's one of my favorite memories from
Uh-huh.
something like that happened to me pretty much. Except I didn't make any jokes. Somebody started a rumor about me going to shoot up the school. And it spread and it spread. And, you know, I suppose on some level I was asking for it because sometimes I wore a really long tailcoat for no reason.
See,
But,
you never told me that. That
hey, alright, people said I look like Harry Potter, and I was like, it's like, oh, but
who would
it was.
suspect me? I look like Harry Potter.
It was the closest thing to positive reinforcement I ever got from other kids, so I just kind of wanted to stick with it. But anyway, someone just started the rumor that, oh yeah, me, Bully's gonna go shoot up the fucking school in a couple days. I have the date, I got the exclusive scoop interview with him, you know? And he said, yeah, this is the plan. You know, I'm so cool, I'm cool with him. You know, he told me not to go, so I'm doing you the solid, so I'm really cool, you know? So, you know, just everybody stay home because he's gonna do this that day. And I had no idea this was happening. On I just I just wake up one morning, I get on the bus to go to hang on. Sorry, I'm getting my timeline a little bit mixed up. I wake up one morning. The police are knocking on our door. The police are knocking on our door asking about this fucking rumor. Because like 70% of the school decided to stay home. Just the police come in and fucking interrogate me and my family about this. Now, one thing that made me sweat bullets during all of this was the fact that I collected things. I never bought one personally. I just somehow wind up with them, but I had a collection of knives and we had it on this whatnot shelf in the living room. And they knock on the door, they ask to come in. I come out of my room, you know, slowly because, you know, I heard from down the hall that the police are here. And I'm just fucking sweating. I walk past the shelf, look at them, and I just start sweating. I look back at the cops and I'm just getting this really intense stare. So I'm just like, hello, what's the problem? You know? And they come in, it's like, yeah, there's this word going around school that you intend to do a great amount of violence. And I'm just floored. You know, how does a 16-year-old respond to that?
Right. Yeah.
How did I respond to it? I didn't really have anything to say. I was just like, no, I'm not. I would never hurt anybody. I just, ooh, you know, you know, it was just such a flabbergasting situation. I had no idea this was happening or that rumor existed. And yeah, I was just floored. There's no other way to put it.
So at least you had the sense to just deny it and be flabbergasted. I would have made vague, sarcastic jokes to the cops and probably gotten myself in a lot more trouble.
Jesus. But yeah, I got escorted to school. I got
Damn.
escorted to school. There were at least like 8 to 10 squad cars out in front of the school, police everywhere. This was right before the bell rang for everybody to enter, right at the beginning of the day, like the sun's just coming up, all that. And I'm just directly going to the principal's office. You know, I got my backpack on. They're like, hey, take your backpack off. I'm like, take your backpack off. Okay. I take it off, put it down, and they rummage through it. Surprise, surprise. Uh, no firearms, no weapons. Binders, books, notebooks. No weapons. And then I'm further interviewed a little bit, asking questions if I knew anything about this. Of course, I don't. I didn't know the first fucking thing about this, you know? I wake up first thing in the morning, there's police coming in, right? They were cool about the knives, by the way, thank God. They technically weren't mine, it was just a collection we had on a shelf. And it was like,
Oh, we've got some weapons of mass destruction over here.
no, thankfully, in Louisiana, people, like, you know, if you have guns, you have knives in your house, that's fine. That's not an inherent problem. If you don't have a felony or a warrant, they don't care. They're fine. As long as you don't have a felony, a warrant, or one of them in your hands when they get there, they're cool. But yeah, the shit's taken out of my backpack, rummaged through, I'm asked a few questions, and then I'm set into this other room, the conference room, with one of those really long tables. Like,
Yeah.
I'd say easily like an 18 to 20 foot long table with like
So
the
they can
rounded
pretend they're
ends.
negotiating across the English Channel or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just asked a bunch of questions. Thankfully, thank God that my grandmother is known around town, is like basically locally famous because she's the order taker for this local place pretty much everybody goes to and eats. A great fucking place with amazing food. If you find yourself in central Louisiana, you're definitely going to want to look around for a certain Western themed barbecue spot because that shit is great. But yeah, anyway, thankfully, because of my grandmother's reputation being known like that, the police were just about as pissed as my family was, and about as confused as I was. So, I got about a week off of school. And
Well, hell yeah, man. People suspect you of wanting to commit mass murder, you get a vacation.
Mm-hmm. And the kid who started the rumor, he got expelled and had to go to a different school.
Justice.
They asked if we wanted to pursue charges. I was like, fuck no.
Do you, would you know how to get a hold of the news clip of that day at this day and age?
That was deleted at some point because it was a big nothing burger. The local paper just printed out this story as it was developing. And eventually, because I guess of just the way I was like, I don't want to pursue charges, the newspaper got a hold of that and they just dropped the story because it was just bullshit. And I think it was partially due to the fucking terrible comments parents were leaving.
Just context, me and Bull were friends at this point in time when this whole thing happened to him, and I was just like, there's no damn way. So I go to find the clip, and apparently Facebook was the last place the clip from the news segment they ran on it was still going through, and there was just this vast cavalcade, this veritable cornucopia of just fucking parents with square box pictures of them smiling into a camera way too close on Facebook. Just the kind of stuff they were saying about this very much not open and shut case. This something where no evidence was collected, nothing happened. There were people like, this kid needs to be in a psych ward. Other people were like, fuck that, send him straight to death row. I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah. I knew some of these people. My town isn't that big. I knew some of these fucking people. My family knew some of these fucking people leaving these comments. And I'm sure some of these people knew my family. Because again, this isn't a huge town we're in. It's like 10,000 people. Word gets around. Pretty much everybody knows each other. Or at least by, family name. And it's just... fuck. In seeing that, thankfully, I wasn't bothered because once everything had started to settle down and I knew I was okay, I just started laughing because everything was just. It's like. Are you fucking crazy?
Wild.
Holy shit! I've had the entire town I live in against me, all the parents. I'm not gonna say all, there were some reasonable people who were like, you people are fucking crazy. There's no evidence that anything was going to happen. Obviously, nothing has happened, or else we would have heard about it by now, right? There were some good people. I remember some of their names. They're good people. They knew my family. Well, everybody knew my family, more or less. You know, again, small town, but still. There were some good people, but there were so fucking many. There were at least a few hundred comments in this thread, and I say an easy 85% of them were all negative and against me. Thankfully, I wasn't named in the story. Or else, holy shit. At
Yeah.
least the local paper had a little bit of integrity.
Scary thought. Probably not for lack of trying, though.
Yeah. No, the law prevents developing cases involving minors. It the law does not permit their names or faces to be used, thank God. Because that would probably still be following me around. Because I'm sure if this ever gets anywhere, somebody could find my name, and if that story exists somewhere, whoo, it's gonna be a field day. That I've always been dangerous or something. Whatever. That's not the point. The point is there a point? The point is I'm telling a story. In, did you mute your mic?
No. The point is, children are cruel. Moral of the story.
Yeah. And I think it's a result of helicopter parenting. Because the only people, out of the ones that I knew that were in that thread, and knowing their kids, they were helicoptered. It's the helicopter parents that were just throwing out this terrible shit about something they knew absolutely nothing about.
I think it has probably more to do with the sensationalizing of
Yeah.
these incidents on the mainstream news.
Maybe.
I mean, it's because that kind of stopped happening, and now in the United States, these mass school shootings have just fucking gone the way of the dodo. It stopped being a route for these people to become immortalized, for people to actually notice them.
Yeah. I like to think that somehow, in a way, that my case was kind of the death knell for that being like a trend for fucking really desperate teenagers. That maybe somehow that got out there and some kids that were really planning some shit and like looking up information and articles found that article. And because there was like a slight bit or so that vaguely chronicalized my response, if I'm remembering correctly. It was just like, no, this is terrible. This is a terrible thing. No one gains anything from it. You know, if you're angry. I understand being angry at terrible things that are happening in the world, but certain responses are just no. You know? Yeah.
Well,
Anyway.
would you like to move on to something a little more lighthearted?
Maybe. That might be nice. I don't remember how we got there. Just sort of rambling on. But
Growing up in the 2000s somehow turned into that.
yeah, I think that's more of a consequence of growing up in the early to mid 2010s, actually. Because my timeline for growing up is basically skewed towards the middle end of the 2000s until like a couple years ago. I'd say I'm grown now. But yeah. Anyway. Fuck. That was a little heavy. But hey, things are cool, okay? Alright? And I won't lie. Maybe, perhaps, I'm not going to leave anything conclusive on this, but perhaps I didn't, you know, maybe I was just a bit too much of a pussy. Maybe I should have done it out of spite. Thankfully.
Should have is not a threat, YouTube. Keep in mind.
No. I'm sorry. Maybe I should
No, you're
rephrase
good.
it again. I was considering at the time, as a joke, doing it out of spite, just to be like, fuck you. Is this what you want?
Mm.
That's what I mean. But, yeah, that was a fun time. Have you had any major, like, events like that as a kid, as a teenager? I
I
know you've
got
been in a ton of
expelled.
fights and shit, but, sorry.
Yeah, that's why my face looks so funny. I got expelled from
Mm-hmm.
a ton of schools. Not a ton. More schools than anyone else will get expelled from in their lifetime for fighting. And, obviously, where fights go, once you start pushing on to high school, the police will get involved almost every time because high schools always have resource cops,
Mm-hmm.
resource officers.
School resource officers, SROs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And couple of events where it's fucking it should be a rule that teachers do not get involved in those, because teachers just come in and they grab you when you're swinging, and all you know is that someone's
Yeah.
grabbing you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you you
That's what I
you
wanted to
throw
get into. Sorry, no
you throw an
tolerance,
elbow
zero
back and
tolerance policies. The terribleness of zero tolerance policies. Because somehow I'm like anti-confrontational almost, you'd say. We're diametric opposites when it comes to how we're willing to let interactions like go. Like you don't mind a good fight, right? If we were
I
in
mean, as a
school
kid, I
together,
didn't. As an adult, it's I kind of look at it as a great way to get stabbed.
yeah, now, but I mean growing up. And zero tolerance policies, they're the fucking worst. I just gotta say. A kid can't defend himself, or else he gets the same consequence as somebody who walked up to him and cold cocked him.
Speaking of infantilizing children,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, zero tolerance is just the worst. I understand wanting to deter fights as much as possible, but especially in high school, you have potentially up to, what would you say, higher population high schools can be up to like 3 to 5,000?
The high school that I went to had 3,000 students.
So yeah, potentially up to that many hormonal teenagers in a set of like 3 buildings. Fights are going to happen and it is inevitable. And I
Yeah.
really don't think discouraging kids from defending themselves when they are being literally assaulted is any way to go about it. Because I've seen this happen before and it almost happened to me. Again, I'm anti confrontational. I don't even remember what it was fucking over, but some kid tried to fight me. Just for no reason. Just tried to fight me. He threw like a rubber kickball at my nuts and tried to start a fight. That didn't go too well for him, mostly because it was a crowded PE thing. Like a couple classes were moved, something was going on, reorganizing with the school. So there was a bunch of kids in there that aren't usually there with my PE class. And one of those kids, again, is the one that just threw the fucking kickball at my really hard. It hurt. I had to sit down for a second. And he came up, like pushing up on me with a chip on his shoulder, trying to fight. And I had the reaction. My reaction was, it's gonna sound fucking cartoonish. That's why I kind of don't want to say it. But my reaction was, I gave him a peck on the cheek, like a right on the fucking cheek, and walked over to the coach, the PE teacher,
I'm surprised you
and
didn't get
told
in
him what
trouble
was
for that.
going on. Yeah,
You
right?
know?
I think I just stunned him in confusion. Like, is this nigga gay? What? Can I say
Mm.
that? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm trying to. This is just the
It was an A.
lexicon growing up, pretty racially, like, pretty really diverse town. Let's put it that way. Not in a negative way, anything like that. I don't mean any hatred or whatever.
I mean,
I
it
think
was
you
an
get
A,
what I'm
right?
getting
It
at.
was an A. You're good.
Yeah, it was a white kid, by the way, with like a bowl cut.
That's
And he was just going, nigga,
kind
what? You wanna fucking just getting in my face saying that, and Whatever. He got a 2-week suspension. So, all in all, pretty good. School days. I loved school.
Yeah, in
Uh,
stark contrast, I fucking hated school, and
I was being sarcastic.
the weird thing for me
uh,
is people seem to associate it only with the incredibly negative social interactions or bad teachers. No, I was never bullied. I mean,
sorry
I'm a
for knocking my
pretty
mic.
huge
Yeah.
guy. No one ever looked at me and thought that it was smart to bully me, I guess. But I still hated school regardless. I hated going to this place where I had to ask someone pretty please to relieve my bowels, regardless of how dire the situation may have been. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's lunchtime. Go eat. You have 30 minutes to do so. Stuff it all down your face in that time. Do I hear people having fun over there? Stop that. Stop that right now. It's I just why does bullying need to be involved for that environment to fucking suck?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't. Especially when education is so standardized and any sense of intuition or finding a passion or talent is removed from it. It's just daycare. It never stops being daycare, in all honesty. So yeah, I hated school too. Mm.
I don't think anybody likes school inherently.
I've known a few of those fucking people. Those fucking smiling Susans. You know, they're blonde. They walk in the front door with their book stuck to their chest like this, and they're walking all upbeat, and they're smiling for no fucking reason whatsoever. And I have to resist the urge to be like, "What are you so damn happy about?" You know.
I liked school in the fact that it was a place for me to learn. I always liked that aspect of it. I never liked testing or any of that. I've always fucking hated standardized tests. I got in trouble with the school once and had to do a mental health checkup. I got what's colloquial, I think it's colloquially just referred to as a lightning strike. This was in late elementary, and I was just getting really pissed at a standardized test. And I was just, I don't remember. It was just like, I just got frustrated with the test and I refused to take it because I thought it was just such complete bullshit. The questions were worded in such a political way, if that makes sense. Like it was so ambiguous, you could extract 100 meanings from it, and all the answers just
Oh,
made it even more
there
confusing.
were definitely I remember for where I'm from, we had these things called the end of grade tests. We just
Yeah.
instead of SATs, we called them EOGs. You know, you're from the east as well. I remember it's tons, dude, tons. There was so much, and I'm sure it's not different today. It may be worse, but I remember even thinking back then there were so many. It's like here's a written like an essay you have to read, and then here's the questions you're going to answer in like the reading EOG. And the essay was just like the most politically spicy thing about like the ice caps melting I had ever read at that point in time. You know what I
Really?
mean?
Tell me a
Yeah.
little more about this. When was
So
this?
the essay,
Was this
the
like at the
whole,
height of Al Gore or?
no, this was when I was in middle school. This was in eighth grade, so 2010, 2011.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, and I remember like the whole point. Well, in fact, I would say it was more of a right wing thing because the whole point of the article was which I guess they, it was just like, well, you see, the ice is already in the water, so if it melts, it's not going to make a difference. Well, it's just like, yeah, well, some of the ice caps aren't in the water already, so it's, but yeah, that was like the whole point of it is if it melts, nothing's gonna happen. I remember sitting there like,
Mhm.
what the fuck? What am I reading? Why is this an eighth grade end of grade test? You know?
It's definitely an interesting thing. The political indoctrination of children today. Like, there was a recent kind of scandal, I think it was in a California school district, of just straight up, just complete propaganda. Let me pull it up. if I can. Fucking. Let's see. I'm trying to. It was a very recent scandal from like the past couple weeks, where there was just straight up like a racial justice course. Is this ringing any bells with you?
Surprisingly, no.
Really? Fuck, I'm. God damn it, is it getting scrubbed? Like, fucking.
Oh, I mean, this is California we're talking about. If it turns out that everyone thinks they made a boo boo, then they're gonna pretend it never happened.
Oh shit. So I just, Googled racial justice. Fucking study.com. What is racial justice? Lesson for kids, video and lesson. ACLU.org, racial justice program. Wait, ACLU is a legal thing. I'm stupid. Ah, God. I should have done more research about this. It's just something that popped into my mind. I believe, if you want to know a bit more about this, there's an independent journalist, Tim Pool. I'm pretty sure I saw a video of his about it a few days ago, I think it was.
Mixed race supremacists.
But yeah, that's best for the more information. But this is a really interesting thing I just found. Study.com. I'm going to send you the link so we can look through this together. Just pull that up in your little browser. So, study.com is basically a school helper tool thing, and it includes rubrics and school plans, basically. It's a place where some teachers will go to get school plans laid out, you know, and they'll lay them out with the site, and they'll look, and basically, yeah. So, here's the thing in Firefox. There we go. Let's pull that up a little more. Uh-oh, I'm gonna have to delete that. I fucked with the thing earlier in OBS, and it's not letting me touch the browser window. Why the fuck?
Oh,
Why isn't it? I can't. What the fuck?
does the site just not work?
The site works fine. It's there and it's pulled up. However, it's just I can't adjust it in OBS for some reason. I don't know what's up with that. It's appearing though. It's appearing. I'll just zoom in. But yeah, what is racial justice lesson for kids? So this is
Oh,
something. Yeah.
Do they distinguish the age groups that they are targeting with this?
That is a good question. This is also talking about. Am I just dumb? Is this
Civil rights
going
for
in
elementary
early?
down there.
Is this just going about early civil rights? Am I just stupid? I think I'm stupid. You know what? We should drop this. I'm dumb. I'm dumb. Forget that. I'm unprepared. I'm sorry. Scratch it. I'm not mad. That's actually a serious lesson. I'm fucking stupid. I need to get more links together. I'm still learning. All right. I think we're both still learning how to do this. Anyway, continuing on with less dumb shit. Less dumb shit. Fuck this. Moral of the lesson. Fuck school. Helicopter parents suck. The school system is babying children. All that good shit. Fuck that. We're done with that. You know what?
If you have kids, be involved with your kids' education. Don't just make sure they're taking the safest route possible. Let them develop, make sure they're learning what school is trying to teach them, but also make sure your kid has a brain of their own to understand what parts of this information is important, what they're going to need, and what part of it is just stuff that everyone else decided they need to know.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah. We got off track a little bit as far as growing up as a kid in the late 2000s, whatever. Woo, that's where we started, and it was supposed to be fun, and then I'm maybe a bit more of a cynical asshole than I thought. So my apologies, but just thinking back to it, just school sucked a whole
In
lot
your
in a
defense,
whole lot of ways for me as a kid. So growing up, spending most of my time in school, ooh, I had less positive things to say than I thought I did. And for that I apologize. I wanted to keep things lighter, but I guess that's just how that went tonight. uh, anyway, let's not talk about school. Let's wind back the dials of time in regards to this conversation and go back to growing up. Let's talk about outside of school. Because there are plenty of great things about life. Sorry, that's my leg. There are plenty of great things growing up outside of school. Interesting things of our times that don't really exist anymore. For example, I'm not old at all. Growing up, I had a VHS. That shit don't exist anymore. That shit hasn't existed for a long time. I grew up in this very strange period of the transition between old analog media and new media, and coming up and developing during that time. And it was always an interesting thing just seeing how just at some point in the early 2000s shit just went into hyperdrive when it comes to technological advancement, because we really started hitting some great steps and strides, throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. But right around the new millennium, shit just started developing new shit crazy fast. Crazy fucking fast. Just in the
yeah.
span of, in my somewhat short lifetime, VHS, CRT. You don't see CRTs anywhere anymore for any purpose, pretty much. They're fucking
No,
dinosaurs.
but everyone knows someone that still has one.
For the most part, I suppose. So, there was something that was really funny. I was watching an old YouTuber who made a bunch of videos in his just fucking college dorm. And there's one from like 2016, and they're playing like SOCOM 4 on a CRT in their college dorm. And it's like some point between there and the year or two after that, CRTs practically just disappeared. LCDs, LEDs just became so cheap that nobody manufactures CRTs anymore.
Yeah.
And it was like the blink of an eye. It's like I just woke up one day and every screen became flat and crisp, and the colors were deeper, and there would be this interesting thing where if you were playing some games, like the image would skip and it looked really fucking weird, and there isn't an annoying high pitched
Mm.
every time you were in front of your display. It's just like in the blink of an eye. Fat, thin, TV fat, people thin, people fat, TV thin. New bad. New is bad. I fucking love that picture. Just in the ironic sense. It's just dumb, and I love it for how dumb it is. Fake deep stuff, especially like boomer tier, fake deep stuff is some of my favorite stuff on the internet. Just to look at as pure entertainment.
When I was your age, this thing cost $3. What happened? Oh, I see you don't understand inflation, Grandpa.
But yeah, it's just the culture of the 2000s was really strange too, I think.
It was very like I don't want to say apathetic, but despondent.
Maybe.
Like no one no one paid anywhere near as much attention to politics in the aughts as they do now, or as they did in like the 80s. That might have just been like to do with the Cold War and the fact that you had a personality as strong as Reagan, you know, in the office at the time. But I just don't remember people. I don't remember anything becoming a controversy when I was a kid. Now, granted, I didn't have a phone that was constantly spitting everything that happened in the world all at once into my face at all times. But I just don't really remember. It's I don't remember any cultural flashpoints. It's like we've had 30 in the last 4 years. You know what I mean? It's it was definitely a bizarre time where people seemed more carefree, more positive, which is weird considering that we had a president get impeached for perjury. She was trading nuclear secrets with China. Bill Clinton. I'm just gonna say Bill Clinton. It's
I
yeah.
mean, for all the tragedy that it was, I do feel that the the terror attacks of September 11th, 2001, they were definitely a huge uniting factor for the country in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, it was good, especially with social cohesion, but in a lot of ways, it was bad. For example,
I think a better way to phrase that is that it was a tragedy that some positive
yes,
social connections formed out of.
yeah, yeah, I think that's a better way of putting it. Where the people in general were just like, yeah, this is important shit. We're Americans, and this is, you know, we're under attack. We don't know if something like this is gonna happen again next week. You know, we gotta look
I
out
mean,
for
no
our
one thought it was
countrymen.
possible. Like no one believed that
Yeah,
anyone could just attack us. You know,
but easily the biggest downside of it was the fact that the political parties and the political establishment united. And
and then we got the Patriot Act.
the Patriot Act, everybody's favorite thing that keeps getting renewed. Wasn't it only meant to exist for a certain amount of time and it just keeps getting renewed every time it comes back up? Or am I
Only
thinking
for
of something
about as
else?
only for about as long as when did it get renewed?
Yeah. But yeah, man, fuck. That was easily the worst consequence aside from the 3,000 plus people who died in the tragedy. That was easily. That was just. Oh, God. I can't think of anybody who doesn't hate the Patriot Act. I can't think of anybody who.
I'm sure anti-domestic terrorism
Yeah.
cells like it, but other than that,
I suppose, but it just. It has set a very disturbing precedent, especially with the development of technology since then, that the government has almost has free reign to just spy on you. Whatever. It doesn't matter if you've done anything. They can come up with any bullshit reason to be suspicious, and that's just that.
to give you a bit of an interjection here, the
Yeah.
Patriot Act was set to expire on December 31st, 2005, originally.
Can you give me the link for that?
Yes,
Or a
it
little
is.
screenshot? Just so I can pull it
Yeah.
up. Alright. Yeah.
Mhm.
Also, I want to apologize again. That was really shit. My whole bit with the racial justice thing, I didn't know what I was talking about. That was pretty bad. I'm still learning. So I do, again, apologize for that. That's pretty bad. I was just talking out my ass. I don't want to talk out my ass. A lot of people do that. I don't want to be one of those people. I want to at least try to have some semblance of what I'm talking about. Want to talk about things honestly, you know?
Yeah, I understand. I mean, in your defense, though, I have I have seen things
What the fuck? Yeah.
about really opinionated and not so much factual courses on the history of
Yeah.
racial, you know,
Yeah.
relations and stuff like that.
Patriot Act. About where is it? Say, there it is. Many of the Act's provisions were set to expire at sunset on December 31st, 2005, approximately 4 years afterwards. And it keeps getting fucking reauthorized.
Hmm.
And Obama extended it in 2012, I guess, as an extra fuck you before the end of his first term.
Yeah, probably.
Uh, I just look at this. Look at this. On May 11th, 2012, Barack Obama signed the Patriot Sunsets Extension Act of 2011, a 4-year extension of the 3 key provisions in the Act: wiretaps, searches of business records, conducting surveillance of lone wolves. Which that can be anybody. That
That
can
could be
literally be
literally.
anybody.
Like you could say almost anything that would make the FBI just ping you as a future lone wolf extremist.
Almost anything. And that's easily the worst part about it. And it's still it's still it's still a thing. Look! Brand new. May 19th, 2020. The Senate voted to give law enforcement agencies, the FBI and CIA, the power to look into US citizens' browser history without a warrant. Fucking why? It's
That wasn't even
terrible.
on the news.
May 19th, that was just a few months ago. I heard nothing about this. Holy shit, I need to keep up with the
You
Senate
won't,
more.
and you won't, because it's important to remember that all this stuff snowballed into the NSA and what they
Mm-hmm.
were doing. What the NSA was doing that Edward Snowden leaked and was chased out of the country for and branded, a criminal and domestic terrorist and a traitor and all that. What the NSA was doing was illegal. Edward Snowden got ran out of the country and criminalized for telling us that the government was committing crimes against us.
Yeah. Like, no, the whole thing about it, the Patriot Act and its consequences, the entire thing is, according to the Constitution itself, illegal. It's unconstitutional. I don't see how this hasn't been brought to the Supreme Court yet. It's been 19 years and going that this thing has been around. Just
The Tenth
constantly
Amendment.
posing a threat to people's fucking... Sorry.
Yeah, that would be directly unconstitutional under the 10th Amendment. Powers not delegated to that of the United States government shall be left up to the state.
It's just... I've been wanting to say that for a while on a public platform. Just fuck the Patriot Act, fuck everything that was, and just fuck it, hate it a lot.
Put me on all the watch lists. I don't give a fuck.
Either it's just fucking terrible. Patriot Act, fuck. That's definitely a relic from our times growing up that just needs to be gone, but it keeps getting renewed and renewed and renewed and renewed, and there's extensions being added to it. It's being built up upon. It is snowballing into an Orwellian nightmare of surveillance state. Thankfully.
This is a pretty
Yeah.
good anecdote to live by.
Hmm.
Usually, whatever is going on in Europe as far as domestic security goes, it's 5 to 10 years down the pipeline for the U.S. That you should never count out the possibility that our government could start doing the same, taking the same authoritarian measures in the name of safety. It could always happen. The Patriot Act is unconstitutional on every level of scrutiny, and it happened. No-knock warrants are unconstitutional on every level of scrutiny, and they happen.
All the time.
You know?
Like, I'm never gonna forget this one article. I'm pretty sure I should bring this up pretty easily. The no-knock plainclothes warrant thing. If you remember, I think this was from a couple months ago, where this group of, like, what was it, 4 or 5 police officers just fucking... This isn't the Breonna Taylor thing, is it? No, but that is... You know what? Fuck it. This is the most popular case at the moment, so I'll just bring this one up. The Breonna... The consequence of the Patriot Act and just that line of thinking is what brought... I just grabbed the first website that came up. Sorry if it's not legitimate enough for someone's opinion, but the whole process and the line of thought that went into the Patriot Act and this sort of shit is what led to, no-knock warrants, plain clothes, no-knock bullshit. It's what led to the Breonna Taylor case.
So, that's a difficult one I personally do not like no knock warrants.
Yeah.
It's because just all too often someone's just sitting too close to the door. A dad, a mom, a child, whatever. Door comes flying open. Person sitting too close to the door gets shot.
Yeah.
Dog. If the dog is there, it's getting shot. That that's just the truth. That is what happens. Uh, in Breonna Taylor's case, though, I'm going to say that
Hmm.
Breonna Taylor died because of her idiotic boyfriend. Not necessarily because of the police. He's more if the evidence that is available is correct, if the stories that the officers involved gave are correct, then despite the fact that they had a no knock warrant, they decided to knock anyway.
Yeah.
They breached the premises, and her boyfriend fired at the police, and she ended up being killed in the crossfire. That is the official story at the moment. That could always change pending investigation.
Yeah.
If that is what happened, she died because of her boyfriend.
Yeah. That
I'm not a
wasn't
fan of no knock warrants.
that wasn't the case I was looking for specifically, though. Sadly, it's just ever since the Breonna Taylor thing happened, anytime you look up no knock warrant case or anything like that, this is what gets brought up every single time. It's sort of been drowned out by the news and all that. But the case I'm talking about specifically is this one case where uh, the warrant was against this lady. I think it was for soliciting prostitution or something like that. And
Really?
she was staying in her dad's house, and just a fucking bunch of plainclothes police officers roll up to the house like late at night. I think this was probably around like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. maybe. You know, late as fuck at night. And they just bust down the door and grab her without saying a word and start dragging her to the car. Her dad shoots at them. Shoots them, injures them. I think he might have killed one, but don't quote me on that. And currently, he's being the dad who is just protecting his daughter from these mysterious people who just bum rushed the house. It was like 4 or 5 of them, grabbed her daughter and started taking her outside to their vehicle to go away. And he shot them, and he's being just dragged through the courts now for like
Oh,
felony
no.
assault on an officer, assault with intent to kill, all this.
No. This
I
is
don't
the
know
way
the
to
exact
power.
jargon, but
First, it amazes me the idea that
attempted
cops would
murder.
even want
Yeah.
that cops would even want to do a plainclothes raid. Like, that's just idiotic on its face. A no knock raid, as it is pretty sketchy. But to do it and just look like anybody is asinine. Like in the small bit of time you have to comprehend what's going on, it would definitely be a big help if the person who just kicked in your front door had a bulletproof vest on that said SWAT.
Yeah.
This
No, these were just beat cops. From what I remember, these were just like just officers from the precinct, whatever town this was in. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact details. The results for it are just buried under Breonna Taylor. It would take a long time for me to bring it up. I'll be more prepared for this kind of stuff going into it later on. And my apologies for that. But you can find it. It exists, and it's just a fucking terrible case that the police department is fucking filing against him for this. The state is bringing the hammer down on the dad for defending his daughter, trying to protect her from like 4 or 5 guys, and just again plain clothes that broke into their house and started dragging her away late at night.
yeah,
Like,
but the idea of this is something new is also a frustrating one because so I'm gonna go a little off the beaten path here and into some scary territory.
oh boy,
Ruby Ridge.
Ruby Ridge.
So the suspect in question at Ruby Ridge,
Mm-hmm.
obviously not a great guy. Okay, obviously not a great guy. He had a lot of beliefs that I don't agree with. At no point should the FBI and the ATF should have been allowed to post shoot to kill snipers around their property without telling them. from they were barking all kinds of orders at them from their armored vehicles. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
uh, all kinds of information was being displayed on the news, which I'm sure the family had a TV. Uh, at no point should that man's wife have not known that she was going to get her head blown off by a Mark 14 rifle if she'd stepped outside her door. And because of these, what I definitely consider to be breaches of federal power, that woman got her head blown the fuck off in front of her kids.
Yeah.
Was the one that was remaining, or
Yeah, they killed
and
this kid.
not to mention, this all started off with the 13-year-old getting killed.
Yeah, I.
Why? Because he came upon guys on his family's property who were there posted up with guns. And there's a lot of different stories about how that interaction went down. All I know is it doesn't matter who you are. If you're sitting on someone's property with long range rifles and they just happen to stumble across you, you're not the good guy in that scenario unless unless everyone knows they're terrorists. You can't. It's also important to remember at the end of all this, what was the guy's name? I can't remember. Was it Joseph something? The charges that he ended up being arrested on, he got acquitted. It was all over nothing. It was over nothing.
Yeah, it
It,
was. It wasn't over nothing. It was over something completely petty. It
yeah,
was the guy. He was reselling shotguns, right? And that was fine. That was legal. The part is that he was cutting the barrels like an eighth of an inch too short, and that's what this was all over.
and I'll say it. He wasn't a great guy. He was a white supremacist, or at best a racial separatist, which is still not a good point of view to have.
Yeah.
Do
So
you know?
yeah,
But his son didn't uh, need to die. His wife didn't need to get shot in the fucking head in front of everybody. His dog didn't need to get killed.
yeah.
It.
Randy Weaver,
I
by the way.
understand, huh?
The name of the guy was Randy Weaver.
Randy Weaver. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was military, right? Green
Yeah.
Beret. Yeah.
Yeah. Former U.S. Army Green Beret. He moved to northern Idaho in the 80s so they could homeschool their kids and escape what they saw as like this corrupted world. They were like they were preppers. They were a family of preppers, basically doomsday preppers. They were really paranoid about the downfall of society, and they moved there to get away from it. And yeah, Weaver was a part of the Aryan Nations, but
So yeah, not a
that has
good guy.
nothing to do with the case of what
Like,
happened.
I'm not defending Randy Weaver.
No,
I'm simply saying there was needless death
yeah,
in that whole ordeal because of the way that the FBI and the ATF decided to handle that.
yeah,
And people say today that the FBI and the ATF are way too pussyfooted about how they go about doing raids. It's like, yeah, for good reason. The Ruby Ridge was a shit show. Okay, Waco was a shit show. These people are not good at their jobs.
yeah,
They're just as flawed and incompetent as the rest of us,
yeah.
and we've delegated a metric fuck ton of lethal power to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's why when this nation was established, the
Or
whole
maybe the
point
bigger
is to
problem is
give
what
the
we didn't
federal
delegate.
government as little power as possible. Because people are not perfect. The government is not and will never be perfect. There is no perfect government. And just the best solution, in the eyes of me personally at least, is to give the centralness of it as little power as possible. The only rights that the government should have on a federal level, I believe, is to ensure that the states themselves aren't, breaching constitutional rights. And I
Yeah,
think that should be about where it ends. That and federal appeals in the court system. And aside from that, I think the federal government just needs to sit the fuck back and let the states handle their own
they
shit.
need to sit there being,
Yeah.
yeah, they just need to keep arguing with each other
Yeah.
until the end of time.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the U.S. federal. That is exactly what the U.S. Congress and U.S. Senate was designed to do.
Yeah.
Argue with each other until the end of time, and protect our rights
Yeah.
and collect taxes.
Whenever the government, both sides of it, the liberal, the Democrat, the conservative, have been united, it has always been to the detriment of the people
Yeah,
of the
so you
nation.
get the war in Iraq. That's how
Yeah,
you get the Patriot
that's
Act.
how you
You
get
know?
the endless wars that nobody wants to be in, that
Yeah.
we ultimately have no real right to be there, even if many countries do see us as a world police as a negative thing. You know, I'm fine with the US not being the world police anymore. We haven't needed to do that. I'd say since at least the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of the Soviet Union, I think that was the point where the US should have stepped aside to the state it was in like before World War II of just being its own nation. We stay involved in our own affairs, and if our allies really need help with something, we'll help them, but until then we stick to our own. Like, I think that is a good policy. Because now, you know, the rest of the Western developed nations, they're back on their feet. You know, the whole reason the US became the world police was because Europe was in tatters after World War One and Two. And, you
Well,
know, there had to be some power to try to help keep peace on the world stage, and the US was the only one that wasn't too destroyed to not try to do that. So, but we're not at that point anymore. You know, Britain's doing well for itself, you know, in regards to, well,
power. In regards to
in
power,
regards
the
to power and in regards to their society not being in fucking pieces, in regards to London not being, you know, 75% rubble. You know, Britain can handle its own now in a war if it had to go to war. So, and that's the whole point as to why we took over is because they couldn't do that. Britain couldn't do it, France couldn't do it, Germany couldn't do it. Pretty much everybody, except for the United States, wouldn't be able to fend off any attacks from anybody, which is why the US stepped in, which is why NATO exists.
well, the whole conflict in the Middle East is a tad bit different.
Yeah.
The idea is that we can't leave because none of these governments can stay in place for 6 weeks. You know, every time we put one in place, someone like ISIS shows up and overthrows them. Uh, I don't think that requires us to stay there though,
Yeah.
because the entire reason that 9/11 was able to happen is because we didn't take them seriously. Like no one took the Taliban seriously, no one took the Mujahideen seriously. We saw like, oh, no one can reach us.
Yeah, no, when I
Which, in
say
terms of a military strategy point of view, that's
yeah,
true. No one's going to get a navy across the ocean to us. No one ever considered that they were going to hijack planes and ram them into buildings. And even when they got warnings that that might happen, everyone was just like, "Are you kidding me? The Taliban?"
yeah,
You know, that was the general reaction to it. We don't need to stay over there to keep incompetent puppet governments in place. We can just take our national defense against extremists more seriously.
yeah, no, my point getting into that was not that we should be, I mean, I think on like a level as far as it goes as boots on the ground kind of thing, we should be uninvolved in the region at this point. I think it has been way too long, and the puppet governments that have been set up by us, by the US, that's happened, you know, there's no getting around that. They haven't worked. It hasn't worked. It is a strategy that hasn't worked since when was Desert Storm? That was basically like the catalyst, like the late 70s.
Mhm.
Uh, it hasn't worked in fucking God 70.
So the one successful one became a dictator. I mean, but that's always going to happen.
But the point is, I don't think the U.S. should be there anymore. I think we should, as a nation, of course. I mean, as our government and foreign relations, we should keep an eye on the region, but we should withdraw and try to let them set their own shit out. If they come to fuck with us, with the country of the United States, I'm sure some shit's gonna happen again in the Middle East. But I think the best approach would just be, well, maybe
See,
not the
that's the
best
problem,
approach.
though.
I don't think I can say that. The issue is just so complex and there's so much to it. There probably isn't necessarily a best approach. But my personal uneducated opinion from a young Zoomer who's done a little bit, but not a whole lot of research into it, is that we should just let them try to manage their own shit. And if they try to fuck with any powers, then, you know, uh, let's not let that happen. Let's.
So
Am
one
I
of the
articulating
big
this well? I'm.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
The big a monkey wrench
Yeah.
in that sort of outlook is the existence of a place called Syria. When you have a power vacuum, the likes of which Syria is experiencing with uh, Bashar al-Assad's government
Mm-hmm.
having to fight ISIS, and the international interest of foreign adversaries such as Russia there, it is not a matter of if the next big thing happens, but when. So it makes things a bit more complex than that, because we don't. The world doesn't need Russia getting a strong foothold in the Middle East, and there's also it's a difficult thing to contend with because who is Assad fighting? Well, he's fighting ISIS. So we can't, no one wants to help ISIS, but no one wants to help Bashar al-Assad either. So the whole "well, let it sort itself out" thing either ends with uh, a man who is diametrically opposed to our only real ally in the Middle East, Israel, taking back over the country, solidifying his dictatorship, and probably going back to gassing anybody who doesn't agree with him, or ISIS taking over an entire country.
Yeah. It's
It's
just
not a good situation.
none of it is. I mean, the Middle East has been in tatters for all of history. It's just wondering. It just makes me think: is there any fixing the region ever?
No,
Because
I don't think.
it seems like it's always been broken. I mean, there's blood feuds. They're all fueled, and they go back thousands of years between the Jewish people and the other people in the region, the other ethnicities, the other tribes from that area, and there's the big schism that happened in Islam with the caliphate in the fucking successor to Muhammad as the ruling governor. Like, this shit goes back so far. I don't think there is a real solution. There is no right solution. I think it might just always be that way. It's terrible. And
Well,
I just it makes me kind of sad, really. Just thinking
it's
about it, there is no solution, is there? I
so
can't really see one that you could see just as a solution.
it so the Middle East has kind of been like the Ark of the Covenant for every major dictatorship that has ever existed. They are nations with peoples that have been kicked around and stomped on throughout all of history. It is places that have never gotten long enough periods of time to develop properly as nations. There's just constant setbacks socially, sociopolitically, socioeconomically. It's really difficult to say whether or not the region could ever develop into a more modern place.
Yeah,
If I had to guess, probably no, but we can help
yeah,
because the big victims in all this obviously are the people of the Middle East. I mean, it's who's the good guys over there? Well, it's supposed to be us, but
supposed to be.
how can you believe that if your son or your daughter is killed in school because the good guys drone struck the building across the street?
Yeah, it's it's a real sad situation. I wish there was a solution. I can't see anyone, and I think all the governments of the world haven't been able to come up with one. The biggest thing we've had, and I mean, it's only a part of the conflicts that are there, is shit like, oh, a two-state solution, cede land from that. That barely even scratches the surface of what goes on there, like day to day. It's man, I don't know. I don't know enough about it really to speak on as much as I have.
it's
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 just
nothing but perspectives. Every
yeah,
information, every bit of information on is someone's perspective being turned into news.
yeah.
You know,
It's just
it
so
doesn't
much.
matter how educated you feel like you are on the subject. You're ignorant
Yeah,
because no matter what you're getting, Israel's perspective, you're getting Palestine's perspective, you're getting fucking CNN's perspective. Apparently, theirs is important too.
You're getting the Saudis' perspective. You're getting the fucking what is it? The mullahs. There's just so much.
And then
I
every individual terrorist organization has their own media outreach where they post their stories. ISIS has a Twitter page. You know, they
That's
say
fun.
what they think. It just flows out into the world. Um,
But yeah,
to pull a sharp left turn, let's.
yeah. The point of this is this conflict has been going on for so long, far too long. It has affected multiple generations and ours. That is something I remember going back into the deepest recesses of my childhood, is just seeing the shit on the news of what's happening over there and just being eternally confused. It is something that I have been learning about, that I have seen up until a few years ago, really, all over the place with no end. And it's just something that has been kind of a staple of the times, especially of us growing up, especially in the Bush and Obama administrations. It's a huge part of our lives, especially early on, because that,
This is the first president we've had in our lifetimes that has not started a hot war in the Middle
yeah.
East. First one.
Thankfully, yeah, and the whole pull the troops out, that's actually happening, and that makes me so happy. Like, look, you can have whatever opinion on President Trump that you like, and that's cool. If you hate him, I understand. There are quite a few things to hate about him, many of which are legitimate. There's also some things to like about him that are also legitimate, and I think one of those things to like about him is the fact that you can consider this the bare minimum if you want, but it's progress. It is progress. It sounds kind of cartoonish, but I think it's good progress that we haven't started a new fucking hot conflict in that area with his administration. And not only that, but we've been withdrawing a bit slowly but surely withdrawing. And just recently, I think it was just a few weeks ago, we're getting the Saudis on good terms with Israel to help end that part of the conflict. We finally had an administration that realizes that ceding the land is not going to placate the inherent conflict between, Israel and the surrounding powers of the region.
It seems
And we're
like
moving towards peace. Fucking finally. 40 something years around, and we're finally making the first steps towards some sort of resolution on some level, and that makes me
it
really
seems
happy.
as though the driving factor in all this, as funny as it is actually the fact that Iran is amassing power that no one wants them to have, and nations like Saudi Arabia are starting to sweat, and they're looking over at Israel like, "Hey, water under the bridge."
At least it's something. At least there's peace terms in some way or form, and our current president has helped with that. And you know what? I'll say it. I'm proud of him for that. I'm happy about that. He did at least one, you cannot pick any bones about it, good thing.
He
If
also
there's
brought
just
Kim
one
Jong Un to
thing,
the table.
like, God, that's good. I'm happy for that. Like, that's just something we can universally, I think, agree on as a nation, that is good. That
I
is
think you'd be surprised.
really. What do you mean?
Oh yeah, I mean, I haven't seen a whole lot of people just trying the mental gymnastics
Hmm,
it into a bad thing on Twitter, but I have seen a whole lot of people downplaying it on
really?
Twitter. Oh yeah, I
Man,
mean,
that's a
of course, I
shame.
mean, people don't understand what the fuck they're talking. I mean, we don't. I don't understand what the fuck I'm talking about, and I've read way more about this than
Yeah.
most people who aren't politicians. You
Yeah.
know, like this is something that I find myself reading about just about every single night when I'm laying in bed. And I will happily admit this is just 90% of what I'm saying is pure conjecture and it's based off shit other people have said.
Yeah. I do gotta say though, at the risk of sounding like a pageant girl, like a beauty pageant, Miss America, Miss Universe, uh, probably one of the like at the top of the list of things I want to see happen in my lifetime, of things I want to happen in my lifetime, aside from getting like a fucking cool cyborg bionic arm, is to see some form of peace in that region because I think it deserves it, and I think the people who live there deserve to just not have this constant violence and terrorism be their entire lives. I think the people there deserve that very much.
Yeah, and not to mention just what it all leads to. I mean, could you even imagine being a child in Afghanistan in the rural areas where you may or may not have power, you may not have running water, but you constantly see tanks,
Yeah.
light armored vehicles, unmanned drones. It's it's a wild thing to sit there and think about.
Yeah, I completely understand why people from there can and will and do grow up to hate our nation. I do. I just feel we're not doing ourselves. Of course, when I say ourselves, I mean the US as a country, as a government. I don't think we're doing ourselves any favors by sticking in there and doing that. Because, I mean, I want to bring up the quote if I can, but it was like every time you manage to kill a terrorist in
You
the
create
Middle
more.
East, you create more of them because of the consequences of it, because of the unintended casualties that happen.
Yeah.
You create more in trying to quell that one problem, that one cell. More cells are going to come up as a result of that because I'd say on some degree, fuck it, I'll just say it. The US, by and large, is committing a pretty high level of terrorism in the region. I mean, by definition, and I think I'm glad to see that coming in some fashion coming to a stop, or at least it's slowing. I think we can surely say it is slowing down at least. And it's just growing up, seeing this, it was a lot. Everything I knew about politics up until I got around 14, 15, started actually looking into things, it was always the conflict in the Middle East. That's the point. Growing up, that was all kids
It
would
is
hear about
the
politics, really.
it is the political flashpoint
Yeah,
of our lifetimes,
yeah, I believe so.
and it probably won't change for a long time.
Here's hoping, though. Again, I
So
think the people in the region deserve a fucking break, at least for a few generations. I think that just, especially the shit that's been happening since the 70s, about, I mean, if you look at, fuck, what was it? I think it was pictures of one of the Iraq, I think it was, Iraq, Iran. I see. This is how little I know. I confuse
it's
all
gonna
the
be
countries.
Iraq.
But the pictures you will see back in the 60s and 70s, they were actually pretty progressive. Like, they looked like American 60s and 70s pictures, like pictures of just women around in the town square, and they were dressed very much in a similar fashion, like just plain skirts and bloomers and shit.
A side effect of
And I'm curious where the radicalization came from to the whole
uh,
burqa and niqab things.
oh, it's just so to get, imagine
Mm-hmm.
that you had a cultural upbringing, and to some extent you do, but not in the same religious way. Uh, if your government is allowing for heresy, then you get rid of them. That's that's what it is. And these
Hmm.
governments never ever having the means required to fight off these cells
Yeah.
that come up from ground roots movements.
Grassroots movements, yeah. No, no. I don't think there's ever going to be an easy or simple answer for that whole conflict. It goes back way too far. There's way too much information. There's so many sides. It is. There are so many sides and factions that are against each. It's such a huge web of just stuff. I don't think any one power, any one nation, any one person's ideas is ever going to fix the
No,
issues over there.
it
And
won't. And
that sucks. But
it,
that is one of my big hopes in my lifetime is to see some sort of resolution, some form of hopefully lasting peace in that area. Because again, I think the people deserve it. I don't think anybody deserves to grow up in that sort of environment where you're just in a war zone your entire life. You grow up, you live, and you die with everybody around you in a constant state of fear and panicking and running into the basement at the sound of anything in the air over your head. And it makes me sad. And I really hope to see some resolution. White girl
So
Miss Universe me. Peace in the Middle East. uh,
perhaps I think we've spoken about that at
enough.
a decent length.
Enough for now,
So
yeah. Let's
do
move on.
we
Let's do something fun. You know what?
do we really about to say, do we really want to talk about COVID-19, or do you think that's something that can
I think we can wait on that a little bit. I think a good transition, hmm, would
Rootin'
be.
to and carefully shooting, Red Dead Online. Let's
No,
talk about
hang on, hang on. Let's come a little, something a little bit more clever than that. So, fuck it. As far as it goes, as media depictions of that conflict that exist, I think there's some really potent depictions of it that really get in the nitty gritty of just sort of like as Westerners, we're never gonna really know, you know, we're never gonna know what it's like growing up like that. We're never gonna
no, of course not.
see it, or at least I hope we don't see something like that in our nation. But I think there's a depiction that exists in something really recent, and it's a video game. The most overrated video game franchise ever has what at least feels like a really honest, authentic depiction of the kind of shit that's been going on in there, especially in the sort of more modern era, and that is in Call of Duty.
You're really gonna call it the most overrated franchise? Like, it's not like it's winning Game of the Year awards or anything like that.
I suppose I guess I'll just say most popular. I just think it's generally kind of overrated, but Modern Warfare does have, I think, at least an attempt at a brutally honest depiction about what, especially that one mission.
What it's
The
like to be
depiction.
attacked by a power you have
Yeah,
no chance against in
exactly.
the Middle East.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding like a soy consumer, but I think there's a good point in it because outside of combat footage, which is mostly from US troops, we have no idea really what it's like. So this game is going to be the closest that most of us are ever going to really be able to attach ourselves to that experience.
Yeah, it makes you. I agree that there is a scene in Call of Duty Modern Warfare where it gives you some perspective on
Yeah.
well, of course this terrorist group, as they've been labeled, decided to use chemical warfare. They were fighting off in this universe the might of the Russian army, which is probably more of a paper tiger than anyone believes,
Yeah.
but
That's not the
for in
point
this
though.
universe it's not.
The point is it just gives us, it's a fictionalized glimpse into it. But I did feel something there, some emotional chord stricken that helped me understand just the tiniest iota more of what it's like. Just going through that one mission with the gas attack where you play as the little girl and you fucking have to, and I was just thinking that shit like this, maybe this exact scenario hasn't happened and probably hasn't, but just the idea it presents. And as video games, they're a very empathetic and potent form for art. They're really good at getting you to empathize with a situation that's going on because, you control the character to some degree. You control what happens in the scenario and you become involved in it because you are the character in that moment, especially if you have a good ability for suspension of disbelief. And I just think that mission in particular, where you play as the little girl, just fucking witnessing all this heinous shit. I can't imagine that. I could never imagine that on my own, is what I mean. And that sort of camped little video game dramatization of a fictionalized attack, which isn't too dissimilar to shit that has actually happened. It's helped me sort of get more of an emotional basis to help feel and understand how the people of the region do feel growing up with shit that has happened to them and people they know that's not too dissimilar to that scene.
Yeah, I mean, Russia did in fact invade Afghanistan. Mm, you know, not in more of a pure invasion, and not with at least ostensibly uh, pure motivations
Yeah.
like the U.S.
But yeah, I really do mean that, by the way. The thing about video games and allowing you to emphasize them. That's why I think, in some particular way,
Agreed.
they can be the purest form of art as an experience.
So we just got a comment from BW, and he is correct. What we are talking about is indeed going on in Syria
Yeah.
right now. We were talking about that a little bit earlier, BW. Thank you for joining, by the way.
I think I know who you are. Well, welcome. Uh, yeah, though, it's fucking terrible, and I can appreciate that video games as art, it gives you some slight glimpse into it that any videos you see on the internet, helmet cam footage, because U.S. soldiers like to bring GoPros to combat zones, it depicts something that you could never get with footage. And on some level, it can really help you emphasize with the situation of what's going on. And again, it's part of what has really made me feel for the people of the area, and hoping that someday soon, this comes to a close and they can lead what we in the West consider, normal lives. So,
I think that's enough talking about something that we only
yeah,
have a spoiled Westerner's
in
perspective on.
video games, yeah,
Mm.
like that is so silly on its head. Being like, yeah, this video game, and I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But the point stands that they deserve a break. And I think we're going to leave it at that. And the video game depiction and all that, great. Video games, because fuck it. Let's go into it like that. Is that a good segue? Am I ruining the segue by bringing up segue? Probably. But I like video games. You like video games?
Yeah,
Yeah. Video games are pretty fucking cool. And for the reasons described above, with being able to emphasize in situations you would otherwise have absolutely zero way to truly comprehend. And and that's beautiful. And that's why I think, in some capacity, I love video games that are dumb and fun, and you play them and you put them down and you're just like, that was fun. I had fun. But I appreciate video games as an art form as well, as a way of conveying just interesting ideas, and especially more sort of documentarian type video games, if you want to call them that. In the way that they can help provide more perspective on a historical event. And an example of which, I suppose, would be, there's something I've always had a fascination with, and this has been brought about by my family, and my family roots, and that is just sort of the Old West and the frontier period. And this is something we would have no understanding for or a feeling of without video games, I think, just because the most we have is stories that are passed down by word of mouth and, scant papers that have been found and that exist in documentation, you know, and a few
a
photos
lot of court records, believe it or not.
and court records. We do have those. But without video games, without art as well, there's a lot of great art depicting like Western scenes, but I think video games are better for getting the real feeling of the time period. If that makes sense,
Yeah,
in
I
a
mean,
more
yeah, I understand what you mean, especially if a lot of research went into, you know,
Yeah,
the what you end up creating when you put it out there.
yeah. And I think one that has done a great job, especially of that particular era and time period, is Red Dead Redemption 2. I think
All right,
it is fucking fantastic
quite
in its
possibly the
depiction.
world's longest segue, but we got there.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know, we gotta put in filler somehow. Uh,
This has been going on for 100 minutes. I don't think we need filler.
maybe, but yeah, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a fucking fantastic game, and we will never have a true 100% one-to-one sort of perspective of the feeling and the atmosphere and what it was really like in those times, but this that game, I think, it feels, at least in the feeling, in the roughness, in the rawness of it, in the grit of it, feels like, while at times it's cartoonish and there's the fun shit with the time traveler, inevitably it's a video game, so you gotta include fun, silly shit. But I think in general, it captures the time period in a very, what seems to be accurate, in a more general sense and loving sort of way.
Well, I would suspect that the
Yeah,
reality is that was a lot more boring than a Red Dead Redemption
yeah,
portrays
of
it to be.
course.
But Red Dead's a video game; it's got to be fun.
Yeah,
So,
in some way. Of course, like real life back then was not nearly as eventful, you know? But it's just so cool to me to see, granted, they're tinted and very sped up and very, well, video gaming in a way, depictions of such things that could have happened, that did happen. I think it is great to just see artifacts, more or less, from the time, fictionalized or not, to just have such a beautifully rendered, crafted version of a western town going through with the wagons, and there's people working on building the new house or restaurant that's coming up, and just to
no, I
have,
mean you're seeing in Red Dead Redemption 2, you're seeing the turn of the 20th century coming, and it's
yeah,
really cool. It's
yeah,
it's one of the best parts about the story mode.
it's just so cool. That's the closest thing that we are ever going to really have of being able to see what that time was like, what it felt like, what it sounded like. And I think it's beautiful. I fucking love that game. I mean, that's no secret. It's pretty open. It's pretty well known that I love that game, I think.
Yeah, I think
Especially
that
among us. It's just great.
my admiration of Red Dead Redemption 2 comes mostly from the story it tells
Yeah.
and how it chooses to tell it. Trying to really, I like the idea that instead of trying to make you feel like a thing, instead of trying to make you feel like Batman, instead it tries to make you like the character,
Yeah.
which is something that I feel like everyone just kind of overlooks these days when it comes to developing a character in video games. And a lot of effort was put into designing, scripting, and bringing Arthur Morgan to life.
Mhm.
There's so much personality in everything he does, and the way he interacts with the world is really meaningful. It's just how many comments he has for the things that can go on around him is pretty insane. Except
Bro.
for when your
Yeah.
horse might randomly die. It's pretty crazy. I've just no comment on that. But he will have a comment on a passing train,
Yeah.
or if you decide to shoot a bird out of the sky for no reason, he might be like bullseye. He can comment on his appearance in the mirror. He might comment on his boots getting muddy. If he, bumps into someone in busy streets and like, hey, watch the hell out, or excuse me.
Yeah.
And he talks to the bartender. There's almost nothing that goes on as far as an in-world exchange that doesn't have some sort of verbal exchange to it, which I love.
Mhm.
Being able to see the inside of the character's head, in my opinion, is a little bit more important than feeling like a cowboy.
Yeah.
But it does help you feel like a cowboy, especially Red Dead
Mhm.
Online.
Speaking of Red Dead Online, I was gonna transition to that in a second in a different way. And you know what? Fuck it. I just want to say it. Red Dead Redemption, while it follows the formula of Rockstar's previous games, it is such an incredibly unique game and an incredibly unique experience. There's nothing else like it. And I think that applies to the online as well.
Yeah. I mean, the other day I just decided that I was going to lasso someone and swing them around while I was going as fast as I could on my horse until I took out an elk with the dude on the other end of the rope. And I can't do that in any other game. As it turns out, it's pretty hard to kill an elk by smacking it with a person. So I do like pelts. One might say that I've got a bit of a slight addiction to them. But yeah, I love Red Dead Online. I give it more leniency than other people tend to, and I'll admit that quite a bit of that comes from straight bias because I love Red Dead Redemption in a way that I love very few games. It's up there with Metal Gear and Dark Souls for me in terms of just straight personal admiration I have for it. But I also give it a lot of leniency because people tend to forget that when Red Dead Online came out, it was modeled almost exactly on Grand Theft Auto 5 skeleton, right? Whenever you got into fights with other players, they would have a little counter that tells you how many times they've killed you and you've killed them. When it first launched, there was a kill-death ratio, and a lot of the mission structure was pretty much the same. Hey,
Go to
there's
place
a
shoot.
timer now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a timer now. But at some point, during the early development of the game, they realized that they're just, this is looking way too much like Grand Theft Auto. We need to make it its own thing. So all of Red Dead Redemption 2's multiplayer plans at that point in time got pretty much thrown out the fucking window, and then they came up with this frontier role idea. There's I don't necessarily want to say good reason, but at least a heartfelt reason as to why Red Dead Online took so long to come into its own, because it wasn't even originally planning to come into its own. It was originally planning to just follow straight in Grand Theft Auto 5's footsteps, which for me personally would have been catastrophic.
Yeah, I'm glad that the direction of it took its own direction. They saw that it really wasn't working with how Red Dead works, and they decided to make stuff that more complements the structure of the game. Because when it launched, I mean, if the expansions worked the way like GTA expansions worked, I probably wouldn't be playing it right now. I would have probably put it down because I'd be like, this is just the same shit, you know? Like, fuck.
Yeah, see, this is a point that I believe a lot of people miss. It.
Yeah.
The best thing about Red Dead Redemption 2 over Grand Theft Auto 5 is that the bigger the bigger draw to Red Dead Redemption is how you interact with the world and how many ways there are to.
Oh yeah.
And that is exactly how the content that came to Red Dead 2 was designed. It is a way for the world to have more in it and for you to interact with the world itself better.
Yeah.
Not just dropping more material gains. Not that I have a problem with that. I love material gains as much as anyone else, but not just dropping more material gains into the
Filthy
world and
fucking
saying content.
capitalist.
You know,
Filthy fucking capitalist. But yeah, that's why I think it may be one of the best, and it's still rough sometimes. It's still incredibly rough sometimes. But I think in that regard, it may be one of the best, definitely the most immersive online game ever. Period. Hands down. I guess unless you want to count Death Stranding as an online game, but it's like it's its own thing. I wouldn't
see,
count
the
it that
thing
way.
about Death Stranding is that it's like way too hilarious. It's for you to say like too much stuff that is not supposed to be funny. That absolutely happens in Death Stranding for it to stay continuously immersive.
The fucking monster brand deal. It's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly.
I am
It's just,
Norman Reedus. I need more stamina.
he has a canteen that turns rainfall into monster energy.
That is one of the most silly ideas on its head. I love it. I get that it's just a fucking brand deal, and it's made to make people want to buy Monster, but it's so funny. I love
Kind of
that.
makes me wonder how little funding Sony actually put up for Death Stranding up front. I never thought about that until this conversation.
I think maybe it's just Kojima's a fucking weirdo and he likes shit like that.
No, he's an
Really?
eccentric. Correct yourself.
Oh, he's an eccentric. Oh, Kojumble's such a genius. He make game where you walk and you press button to hold strap. Oh, it's so fucking good. You drive a bike that controls like complete shit. It's so.
In his defense, though, like if you designed a game about basically being a delivery man, would you have thought that much detail needed to be in it?
No. No.
Only fucking him would have been like, no, we need a button to hold your backpack straps.
Yeah.
Only he. Like,
That's fair.
anyway, you want to talk about this whole thing that's going on in Red Dead Online about so the lobbies in Red Dead Online have seemingly been split up because I've checked a few times. Red Dead Online has seen no massive drop in its player base in the last 2 weeks. But what has been happening is that the lobbies are never full. They're never even close to it. Like the max you'll see is 10. And whether or not that was intentional, something Rockstar did actively, I don't know. I doubt it because Rockstar just doesn't let anything exist in the game that isn't exactly the way they wanted it to every arbitrary detail. But this lobby size glitch has literally fixed Red Dead Online
Oh yeah.
entirely.
It's
Literally
beautiful.
entirely. It doesn't. I don't keep dropping out of the game. The
No
random
frame
events
dips?
actually happen. I run into treasure hunters. I run into rival collectors. You know, the animals actually spawn. The legendary animals actually fucking spawn now. You know,
And I think it's beautiful. The Red Dead Online over the past, what would you say, it's been about 2 weeks that's been going on?
yeah,
I want it to stay that way. Like,
I do too, personally. Like I mean, it hasn't affected the PvP servers. If you go into a showdown mode, it's still going to be a full size lobby. It's only the open world servers.
yeah, I can appreciate that. I absolutely think it was intentional. I don't want to call it a glitch.
Well, I hope
I
you're right.
think it's intentional and they limited it because of a glitch. Hear me out. Because I've noticed. I was in one lobby long enough where it was able to gather about 15 people and the game was stuttering like crazy.
Yeah,
Like it was
I've
straight
always
up
said
it was getting tons of micro freezes
I
for
have
like
been
half a
saying this
second every
since Grand
10 to
Theft Auto
15
5.
seconds.
In full servers on Grand Theft Auto 5, the frame rate is awful. On an empty server, it never drops. Like the game's performance is inextricably linked to how many people are in the
hmm
server at once,
I
and
think
not just frame
yeah.
rate, like literally everything,
Yeah.
spawn rates, random event rates. It's literally everything.
I think in the manner of GTA Online is online mechanically has such little meat. It needs that many players. It sucks, right? Of course, that there are frame dips, especially in the almost catastrophic weight that they are now, especially on base model PS4s. It's terrible. But the GTA Online has such little real meat aside from you can go and buy this that it needs a higher player count just so
Well,
there's
yeah,
more shit.
I mean, GTA Online's entire structure is now it's like here's a flying motorcycle that has missiles. You know, here's a laser Gatling gun. Of course, that functions on the ability to kill other players with it.
It's
You
just
know,
sandbox and they keep
and
adding new
nothing's wrong with
toys
that.
into the sandbox.
I mean, nothing's really
But
wrong with that at
there's
this
nothing
point. I
wrong
mean,
with that,
the
but
game's forever old.
I'm making the argument that GTA Online suits having that many players because it's a sandbox
It
in
also takes
which
place in Modern City.
in
It's
which
fitting as well.
yeah, it's a sandbox in which all the ways you interact with it really are through getting new toys. And inevitably the the ways you can interact with the world are very limited. So having more players means you have more choices for interaction. In Red Dead Online, I don't think that's as important because there are so many ways you can interact with the world and affect the world in just so many ways. Like, again, you can fucking lasso people, kill elk with it, you can hunt animals, there are animals that you
Yeah,
can do multiple things with. You can hunt them, you can sedate them, you can harass them, fucking make them attack people if you lead them into a town, if it's like a cougar or something. There's so
yeah.
much you can do that isn't based off of player interaction. And in GTA Online, so much of it comes with player interaction and flaunting what you have earned to other players.
Yeah. So the way I'm going to simplify this is
Yeah.
if I had to choose between a Red Dead Online server being full of other players, which I'm going to be honest is something that I never liked from the get go. From the get go, I never liked 24. That is the max count, right? 24 people just being shoehorned in here,
28, I think. I
and
think I remember seeing 28. It's
and
probably 30.
just being able to be either by myself or with 4 other people, and things actually happening, like random events happening everywhere, running into rival traders that you can steal stuff from, running into people who are selling you treasure maps for $5, running into legendary animals, all that stuff actually happening at the rate it was supposed to happen in the
Hmm.
first place because of the lack of players. It doesn't bother me if there's less players at all because I'm constantly
Yeah.
just running into things that the world is showing me that I can do.
And that's why I think
And
the player drop has been such a
wavelength.
good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I think the
It's like
player. Fuck.
for the
Yeah. Sorry for speaking over you a little bit. That's something I need to fix with Discord soon. The attenuation. Anyway, that's why I think it's a good thing that the player count has been reduced. Because open world PvP is not such a staple to Red Dead Online compared to GTA Online. Again, Red Dead is a game very much about the world you're in and how you interact with the world. Having the limited players like the way it has been means those ways to interact with the world have always been there, but the limited player count makes it to where it happens and it opens up those interaction options. In GTA Online, the only options you ever really had as far as interacting with the world, aside from stealing cars, was like armored trucks and holding up convenience stores, and that was really about it. But in Red Dead, they make it very clear, and it's especially easy to see.
it's here, so why not?
Yeah,
You know,
and it's just especially easy to see since the lobby limitations and open world events actually happening. It just cements that Red Dead Online.
seen before. I didn't know how many there actually were that could happen until this new small lobby phenomenon started going on.
There's probably hundreds, given the
I
size of
never
the world.
find a treasure map fucking nailed onto a tree. I didn't know you could run into people who will be like, "Hey, you want this treasure map? It costs $5.
Yeah,
Just take it, please."
that's great, and that's easily why Red Dead Online is better to me. Just fucking just interacting with the world. I love games like that. I'm not the biggest PvP guy anymore. Like I played a lot of Black Ops 2 and shit uh years ago, but now when I'm going into online games, I'm more about how I can interact with the world and have my friends there, you know?
That is definitely something that kind of is starting to matter more as I get older. It's like, how can I get my friends involved in this? Which is kind of interesting because I've always been definitely a person who leaned more towards single player, personally.
Yeah. Ever since I first learned that online multiplayer games were a thing, I have always been looking for this thing where it's not just something about racking up kills on a scoreboard, but more how can I just share this cool experience with somebody? How can I indulge in this just unique, fun, cool, just again, experience? And that being said, I love Battlefield. All right, I enjoy that, and I enjoy. I suppose even in Battlefield, why I like it more than Call of Duty is the fact that it's also an experience you can share with friends more, because you work together, or at least in theory, you're supposed to work together in Battlefield and coordinate. But
Yeah, up until someone has taken too long to throw down the ammo box and it's time to call them racial slurs.
yeah,
Uh,
but until that, just the idea of it, of something that could be considered a constructive, not necessarily adversarial experience you can have with other players or with friends has
Don't you think
always
there's
been
something
something.
rather
Yeah.
addictive about adversarial experiences, though?
Yeah, you
Like, I
know,
think Rainbow Six Siege is a uniquely addictive game.
yeah,
But that being said, that's a way different kind of fight than Call of Duty.
yeah,
It's very personal.
yeah.
You know?
And that has its place, and I do like them. I do. But it's just ever since I heard that big online games were a thing, like when I was around 12, I think it was, I've always just been looking for this kind of thing where it's like I can just chill and do cool stuff that isn't necessarily involving potentially making another player's experience bad, you know? And for a long time, that game was GTA Online. But
I don't recall GTA Online ever being like that.
no,
It
the
was
point
playing with a
is,
different crowd than I was.
no, the point is I was looking for something like that. And the closest thing that I knew that existed that I had access to was that. And that's
You
part
could
of
at
why I
least
played it
try
so much.
with GTA
Yeah,
Online.
you could at least try. I mean, we've had so many times where we just went on like the fucking nature hikes and all the trails,
And then
and
someone
we've just
flew by
taken
in a
in the
combat
sights.
jet, fired
Yeah,
heat-seeking missiles.
and for the longest time, that was it, and that was the closest to my perfect online game. And then Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, and it has been almost exactly the thing I have wanted for so long in regards to that kind of experience, and I love it dearly for that.
Yeah, I agree. My big thing when it comes to open world games, especially because open world is starting to become more of a trope than it's definitely not a unique thing anymore, and it's used as a catchword now. You know,
Yeah.
and so many games have menial open worlds, but I definitely love Red Dead Redemption 2's world and
Hmm.
the way it allows me to explore and experience it. I love, dude. You can just be walking on a cliff and just on this nice nature trail, and something that you could never foresee, like an elk, just decides he's going to end your whole career and headbutts you off the side of a mountain. You know?
That happens, and it's fucking great.
Yeah.
In GTA, the closest experience you have with that is that they intentionally tweak the fucking AI traffic to get in your way every single time you go somewhere. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing like that in GTA. And that's why I say Red Dead is, I think, my perfect game for that kind of experience, which I think is my favorite kind of online game experience, which is why I've been playing it so much. Just this thing that can be constructive, it's cool, and a lot of people say Rockstar's game design is outdated completely, and in some ways I suppose I can see that, but
I'd
I
say
really,
the way they think multiplayer should be structured
yeah,
is very date, but the game design itself, slow burn does not mean out of date.
yeah.
You know, Martin Scorsese that and he'll slap you across the face. You know?
But yeah, and just what I mean is a lot of people don't necessarily like the design of here's the world, you can go to a mission whenever you want. They just want it to be more linear, I suppose, and they think it's out of date into that you can kind of do things out of order in Red Dead completely.
Yeah.
But the point I think I'm trying to make is I like that a lot in online. Like a lot in online. It makes for much more dynamic experiences. You don't necessarily have to sit through the cutscenes if you don't want to. And there's so much shit that can happen. So much shit that can happen that's not cutscenes, that's not entirely scripted. And I love that. In GTA Online, if you want to see the coolest of the cool shit, you're going to a mission for that.
Yeah.
You're going to spend 3 minutes up in the clouds, waiting for a loading screen, and then you go into a cutscene where this cool thing happens, and it's cool to
I think
see. And
the cutscenes are just the biggest fucking monkey wrench in Grand Theft Auto 5's and what makes Grand Theft Auto 5 fun. It just they find a way to shoehorn a cutscene starring Lester in every fucking thing you do. Uh, it's I like Grand Theft Auto 5's world still. I like the fact that it's just here's a multiplayer sandbox playground, kill each other, have fun, grief each other. Okay. I think more games should be like that. You know, this less safe.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, they're two different games in GTA 5's defense. I just happen to like what Red Dead Redemption offers more.
yeah, it's not nearly as player combat focused in the open world, and I really appreciate that. Partially because I'm not that good at it, and mostly because it's just fun to chill. I think to just
Yeah,
fuck with the AI because there's so many different kinds of AI. in the world that just roam around. Like every animal has its own behaviors, and people, like people have different personalities,
Some of
basically,
them
like
don't. Some of them
NPCs.
don't necessarily have behaviors. Like a
Yeah,
cougar is always gonna try to kill you. But I
yeah,
get what you mean. They at least, when you're not actively fighting them, they're doing something that an animal would do, not just staring at a cliff face.
yeah. And it's just cool to see that, and I'm really happy about it. And again, Red
All
Dead
right.
Online's my perfect just online game, even if it is kind of rough a good bit of the time. Just the concept of it and the way it's executed and the current way it's being developed. It's like my perfect online game.
Okay. Uh, Not to be a Debbie Downer here, but
Hmm.
we've been here for 2 hours and we've got our four obligatory viewers on YouTube and some people on Twitch and I'm sure some people on D Live. And I
Yeah.
think these people might want to look for a wrap up. So, would you like to end on a note of positivity? A thing you like, a thing you appreciate
No.
for today?
Uh, I'll say something I appreciate is just the fact that I can do this. This is something. This is my second time ever really doing it. Still brand new to it, and I'm still a bit nervous. I don't always, or at least right now, I'm not always saying things that wish I could say things, and this and that, but I'm sure I'll fall into it eventually. I'll get it. We'll get it going on. After all, this is number 2 of this little project. We're officially number 1. I'm just so happy to do this. Even if it's in front of nobody, even if it's only just our friends tuning in, it makes me happy to think about that. Just, again, even if it's just people we know are watching this, and people we don't are watching
And
this and are
I'll
feeling,
say,
yeah,
you continue. I'll wrap up that
okay.
thought.
And the people that are watching this are feeling entertained and maybe a little bit better. Maybe some noggins have gotten a little bit jogging, a little thought provoking stuff. Just anything. I'm just very happy and very grateful for the opportunity and the ability to do something like this. It's genuinely, I feel that it is. Thank you. Thank you. I genuinely think that. Fuck. I just. I enjoy it. I feel privileged to be able to do so. I'm really happy that I can do it, and this is definitely something I want to do more. Because this is just fun, and not in the conventional sense, but fun in that this is something I enjoy doing in a way that is very difficult to put into words. But I enjoy it very much. And thank you to our friends watching, to anybody tuning in. You're appreciated. Your viewership, your patronage is very much appreciated. And I'm happy to have you, and I hope I did well.
Very well said. Uh, Things I like. BW, thank you for being here. Didn't expect that. And thank you for just kind of ignoring everything you could have criticized us for.
Yeah.
It means a lot, man. And and for my thing I like, Ghost of Tsushima. Play it. It's good. It's better than The Last of Us Part 2. Yep, you go into controversial territory there. It's fun.
Great. Very on the nose. Very on the nose.
But things I like. I mean,
I encourage you to be a little bit more eloquent. But
thank you
hey,
everyone
I
for being
appreciate.
here during. Thank you everyone for being here during the stream. I hope to see you again tomorrow because we will be doing this again tomorrow.
Yep.
I really liked the chat, nice and well maintained and controlled.
Love you,
A lot of
Poopy
maturity going
Mexicano,
on
if you're
here.
still here.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. If you're
Great
still
name.
here.
Yeah.
The number never dropped, so I believe Poopy Mexicano 69 is still here.
Happy to have you, bud. Great name. It's I worry for you just a little bit. I'm not a scat appreciator personally, but you know.
It's a bit of an acquired taste, but you do you, bud.
Yeah. So, once again, thank you very much for showing up. We appreciate all of you. And we'll catch you later. So, bye bye. Peace. Goodbye.